Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What do we wait for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome one and all of my geeks, and guess what? You're a geek about something. Everybody's a geek about something, but that's okay because geeks are sexy. Welcome to the midweek geek edition of Geek Therapy Radio. I am your host, Johnny Hamburger. I'm your mental curator for the next however many minutes this goes on for. As you may or may not know, Midweek Geek is way more of a free-form format than my usual radio show, Geek Therapy Radio. There's no segments in Midweek Geek, and there's no time limit to Midweek Geek. I might do a Midweek Geek 1 week that's 7 minutes. I might do a Midweek Geek 1 week that's 70 minutes. I try to keep it condensed, a little bit more consumable. But yeah, welcome to Midweek Geek. We're going to get into some stuff here. I'm just preparing you right now. We're talking about the Chris Hardwick, Chloe Dykstra scandal, sexual accusation scandal, allegations of sexual abuse Chloe has made against her ex-boyfriend, Chris Hardwick. But before we get into that, let's do a little bit of house cleaning. I'm excited to announce that my digital presence has been broadened. As of last week, now you can find Geek Therapy Radio, both the blog and the podcast, and show information on the websites for KPRC 950 AM, but as of last week, Sunny 99.1 FM and 94.5 The Buzz. So if you go to those websites and click under shows and podcasts, you will find Geek Therapy Radio. I'm super excited to announce that. The actual address of thebuzz.com, it's not thebuzz.com, I didn't know why I said that. It's thebuzz.iheart.com. So if you type into your web browser, www.thebuzz.iheart.com. And for Sunny 99.1, it is sunny99.iheart.com. sunny99.iheart.com. Actually, now that I think about it, is it that bad? Is it that wrong to say point instead of dot? I guess it is. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. But for now on, instead of saying periods or dots, I'm going to say, yeah, go to www.google.com. All right, I digress. Let's actually get into it. I think what I'm going to do here, before I weigh in on my opinion on the matter, and I please, listeners, please, and those of you watching this video, hear me out until the end. Do not be one of those people who stops the video 3 minutes in and writes your comment about it. Watch the whole thing and then comment about it, especially when it comes to my opinion. You need to hear me out on this one because sexual abuse is not a subject to take lightly ever. But that's what we're going to talk about here on Midweek Geek. And I'm going to start out by reading the entire body of text that Chloe Dykstra posted to the website medium.com. She says she posted it basically to get something off her chest. She had no idea that it was going to go so viral or become such a huge thing. But after she posted it, Chris Hardwick took a beat, and then he gave his response. So I'm going to read what Chloe Dykstra said, and then I'm going to read Chris Hardwick's response to it. Real quick, Chris Hardwick, he and I kind of operate in the same atmosphere. We occupy pretty much the same space of media. He he created the podcast, The Nerdist. The Nerdist is really like one of the top 3 podcasts of all time. Like it ranks up there in the top 10 consistently, and sometimes in the top 3 of all podcasts, like right next to Mark Maron and NPR and all that stuff. The Nerdist was top 10 always. It's a huge mega company of podcast, and the podcast itself was huge. Chris Hardwick also hosted AMC's Talking Dead, Talking with Chris Hardwick, and if you remember way back to his MTV days alongside Jenny McCarthy on that dating show. But that's way back when. So that's who Chris Hardwick is. And I mentioned who he is because his career is way more prolific than Chloe Dykstra's. She is also involved in the media But let's be honest, to a lesser degree than Chris Hardwick. And she kind of explains in her text here why it's to a less degree. She says she was blacklisted by him. Anyways, let's just get into it. I'm going to read Chloe Dykstra's entire unedited body of text. And then I'm going to read Chris Hardwick's response, and then we're going to talk about it. So here we go. Right off the bat, it's titled Rose-Colored Glasses, A Confession. This is Chloe Dykstra's story. From here on out, it's all her words. Trigger warning. If abuse, sexual assault, or anorexia makes you uncomfortable, you might want to avoid this one. A side note, for me, Johnny, I'm not going to edit any of this. If there's curse words in here, I am not censoring it. This is just the podcast. There may be explicit content. Back to Chloe's words. Over the years, I've attempted to write this quite literally 17 times. I've spoken to friends, therapists, lawyers, publicists. The drafts have ranged from cathartic, angry letters to litigious, hardened accounts of inexcusable treatment until I got one piece of advice from a friend. Write from your heart. You'll know it's right when it's right. So, here I go. I've struggled with such a great fear of talking publicly about my experience with long-term abuse. There's an explicit danger putting my personal and professional reputation on the line. It's so easy to make judgments about someone you don't know personally, or maybe do know personally, but not well. It's the same both ways. Did they? Didn't they? I'm here to tell you my story. Not necessarily intending to point my finger at the man who did it, though that may be an unfortunate consequence for him, but for a different reason. Admittedly, there's still an anger inside of me, an anger at him, an anger at myself for letting myself fall into the trap and being naive enough to stay there. But after hours and hours of thought, I've finally come to the conclusion of what I want this to be. I want this to be two things. Number one, closure. I'm approaching my 30s, finding stability, and quite simply, I want this out of me. But more importantly, number two, a warning. Emotional abuse is a very common thing, more common than you'd think. Here's my story. In my early 20s, I was a vibrant, goofy kid who loved video games, Doctor Who, dressing up in cosplay with friends, and karaoke nights. One day, I met someone at a convention and ended up falling for a man almost 20 years my senior. It wasn't the first time I'd found myself in a relationship with an older man. I've always joked about my daddy issues and thought that with age came stability and wisdom. Welp. Our relationship started out poorly. Within 2 weeks, rules were quickly established. Some of these included: 1. I should not want to go somewhere at night. My nights were expected to be reserved for him as he had a busy schedule. This alienated me from my friends. 2. I was not to have close male friends unless we worked together. All photos of male friends were to be removed from my apartment. This was heartbreaking for me, as my best friend happened to be male. 3. As he was sober, I was not to drink alcohol. Before we began dating, he said, "I noticed you have a glass of wine with dinner. That's going to stop." 4. I was not to speak in public places, elevators, cars with drivers, restaurants where tables were too close, as he believed that people recognized him and were listening to our conversations. Our dinners out were usually silent, him on his phone. I wasn't allowed to take a photo of us. Eventually, he softened on this rule, but was very stern about me asking permission. These were just a few of them, and I made the choice to accept his controlling behavior, as he just left his long-term girlfriend, and I assumed that he was going through some serious emotional discomfort. This was a huge mistake. Our first convention together, San Diego Comic-Con, he instructed me not to leave the hotel room. He went to parties by himself and got a famous actress's number with intention to date her at the same time as me. I found out months later I couldn't bring myself to say anything because by this time, my self-worth was in the toilet. I was quickly pressured to take an on-camera job at his company I didn't want. I do not like to work for my significant others. Because he insinuated I would be ungrateful to not accept it. Scared to upset him, I accepted the job, but I refused payment for my work, feeling uncomfortable about the whole thing. Though the lovely folks at his company eventually forced me to take a check. By this time, like I said, I was terrified to piss him off, so I did what he said, including let him sexually assault me. Regularly. I was expected to be ready for him when he came home from work. How did this happen? At the beginning of our relationship, I was quite ill, often due to my diet, something I'll get into in a bit. One night he initiated, and I said, "I'm so sorry, can we not tonight? I'm feeling really sick." He responded, "I just want to remind you, the reason my last relationship didn't work out was because of the lack of sex." It was a veiled threat. I succumbed. Every night I laid there for him, occasionally in tears. He called it starfishing. Okay, I just got it. He thought the whole idea was funny. To be fair, I did go along with it out of fear of losing him. I'm still recovering from being sexually used, not in a super fun way, for 3 years. The first time I told him I loved him after 6 months of hoping he'd say it first, his response was, and I quote, "I think I love you too. Fuck it." What I wanted was a partner, someone to confide in, someone to share things with, someone who wouldn't judge me, someone I knew would be there for me. What I felt that this man wanted was a woman who would feed him, sleep with him, and go to events with him. I watched and supported him as he grew from a mildly successful podcaster to a powerhouse CEO of his company. Here's a side note from me, Johnny Hemberger. She has not mentioned Chris Hardwick by name. She doesn't do it anywhere in this post. Back to Chloe's words. He was obsessed with celebrity, being famous people. He did not spend any time with people he considered friends, and only really made time for industry people who he considered worth it. I, myself, had very little personal support as I'd been alienated from my own friends other than an occasional party I was obligated to leave early when he decided it was time. Sometimes he let me go play D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, but I always had a curfew. He would yell in his voicemails at me if I didn't answer his calls. I was expected to follow him everywhere and exist pretty much solely for him, save for a hosting job once in a while. When cameras were on us, he was a prince. Turn them off, he was a nightmare. During all of this, I lost myself, both mentally and physically. I lost 15 pounds within weeks, started pulling out my hair, and had to get extensions regularly to hide it. I generally stopped speaking unless spoken to while with him, drifting through life like a ghost. I would try to sleep in as late as possible so my days were shorter. I stopped listening to music entirely. I ceased to be. I was an ex-person. No one could save me but myself. After 3 years of being snapped, yelled at consistently, very rarely being shown any affection, I finally left him for another man that I had literally just met. I was so desperate to be out, I just clung on to the first knight in shining armor to show up. Unfortunately, there was a slight crossover, a kiss I immediately told him about, and he, surprisingly, instantly forgave me. Turned a total 180. He begged me not to leave him, even told me he was planning to propose, despite stating previously he had no intention to marry me. I knew this all stemmed from his fear of being alone. He actually got engaged very shortly after I left him, so luckily I remained strong in my resolve to leave him, despite my only desire for 3 years being that he loved me the way I loved him. Because of my leaving him for someone else, he made calls to several companies I received regular work from to get me fired by threatening to never work with them. He succeeded. I was blacklisted. With the assistance of a woman who'd gained my trust and my heart over the past year, he steamrolled my career. The woman actively made it her mission to destroy my friendships, and she did, because by the time they'd realized she was an unreliable source, the damage had already been done. To be fair, in breakups like this one, some friends will just naturally gravitate toward the person who wields more power and the ability to employ them. Especially in the business I'm in. Despite whatever history exists, still, there's so much more to that woman's story, including 6 other women whose reputations, careers she attempted to sabotage. But I don't want to digress too far from my point, which is abusive relationships, not friendships. This time in my life was agony. One night I found myself on top of an overpass looking down at the 101 at my lowest point in my life. At the lowest point in my life. I'd lost many of my friends. The woman I considered my sister was trying to destroy me, and I had no idea why. And the career I'd built from scratch had toppled. I was blacklisted from my industry at the age of 25. Obviously, I didn't go through with it, but over the years I considered it many times. With the help of a therapist, psychiatrist, good people, plus a lot of hard work, I managed to rebuild my life, and I'm in a much happier place. I've got a wonderful group of friends, a healthy career, a film I'm proud of, a show I'm proud of, 2 wonderful dogs, a house I own, and a bright future, at least in my eyes. But I never received closure from the long-lasting trauma, physical and emotional. For the time I was screamed at for spilling some bottled water in a rental car, for the time I asked him if he was okay one too many times, for the time I gasped at a cute puppy and I was punished for startling him, for how cold and unkind he was to me 90% of the time, for losing the life and friendships I'd built because of his insecurities, for blaming me for leaving him when he was never there in the first place, except when he wanted sex. I'll leave you with this. I lost my period for a year because of anorexia. Somehow I got pregnant ectopically. 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 I was told I'd have to have surgery immediately because ectopic pregnancies are very dangerous and can often be fatal. When I found out, I collapsed on the floor, terrified he would be furious with me. Between sobs, I told him over the phone, please don't be mad and don't worry. I have to have surgery to have it removed or it could kill me at any time. My fear of his anger at me for getting pregnant was literally greater than my fear of death. Let me add here, I'll never forget the night this man slept in a cot at the foot of my hospital bed after my surgery. It made me believe that deep down inside of him, maybe there is a man who loved me. Then after my recovery, he and my mother were greeted by the doctor. The surgery went well, she'll be fine, said my doctor. Thank God, said my mother. That's great, when do you think I can have sex with her again? Said my ex. It was his first question. My mother never forgot. While we were together, he repeatedly shared with me that he was terrified I would talk publicly about how he treated me, but I'm done protecting him at the expense of my own mental health. He talked about me publicly, incorrectly speculating loudly and regularly that I was sleeping around on him on multiple occasions, once in front of an audience of thousands at a convention. It got so bad, I ended up having to ask my lawyer write him a letter. Meanwhile, publicly, I continually tried to go high while he went low. Also at the time, I knew it was unlikely people would choose to believe me over a cheery-sounding famous guy. All it would do to properly come forward was hurt me. And guess what? It will probably hurt me now too, despite the Me Too movement. We've come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. You know, perhaps this post could be construed as me going low when I should be going high, but I like to think Michelle Obama would support me in this because I'm not alone. This kind of relationship is so common and so easy to slip into. Normalizing behavior never happens incredibly quickly, and one can lose track of what is acceptable treatment. And that's the big question, isn't it? If this person treated you so badly, why did you stay? Your guesses will probably include: it wasn't that bad. Memories can warp. 2, he was famous. She enjoyed the lifestyle. For the record, I usually insisted on paying for dinner. Thank you very much. 3, she was dumb and or weak and didn't have the strength to stand up to him. Here is my answer. I believe that, to borrow an analogy from a friend, if I kept digging, I would find water. And sometimes I did, just enough to sustain me. And when you're dying of thirst, that water is the best water you'll ever drink. When you're alienated from your friends, there's no one to tell you that there's a drinking fountain 20 feet away. And when your self-worth reaches such depths after years of being treated like you're worthless, you might find you think you deserve that sort of treatment. And no one else will love you. This story, post, whatever this is, serves as both closure for me as I say farewell to my 20s and stumble my way into my 30s. And it serves as a warning for every single one of you, regardless of gender. One of my favorite quotes comes from BoJack Horseman. You know what's funny? When you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. Please keep an eye out for those red flags. Signed, former trophy girlfriend / ghost, Chloe Dykstra. P.S. To the man who tried to ruin my future. A sincere and heartfelt apology could have made my last 4 years of hell a lot easier. The person I used to date would try to sue me due to pride. I would not recommend it. I have audio video that will support and prove many of the things I've stated in this post. I've chosen not to include it for your sake, in the hopes that the person you've become will do the right thing. Okay, so listeners, that ends Chloe Dykstra's her blog, which she released. All of her words are done. Now these are my own words. Before I read Chris Hardwick's response, which he took a day or so to maintain radio silence before he made his response, I'll just tell you to wait before you make an opinion, or wait till you comment on my opinion until you've heard all this. We are dealing with something very serious. So hear me out, hear Chris out. We've heard Chloe. Let's hold opinion until after we've heard everything. I have my opinion. You will have your opinion, obviously. My show is about coming together and sharing opinion and data and helping spread good information rather than hearsay or speculation. We're free to speculate, but let's call it what it is. It's speculation. So I'm going to speculate after this. I'm going to have an opinion after this. But let's just get into Chris Hardwick's response. Here's Chris Hardwick. These are very serious allegations and not to be taken lightly, which is why I've taken the day to consider how to respond. I was heartbroken to read Chloe's post. Our 3-year relationship was not perfect. We were ultimately not a good match and argued, even shouted at each other. But I loved her, and I did my best to uplift and support her as a partner and companion in any way, and at no time did I sexually assault her. When we were living together, I found out that Chloe had cheated on me, and I ended the relationship. For several weeks after we broke up, she asked to get back together with me, and even told me she wanted to have kids with me, build a life with me, and told me that I was the one. But I did not want to be with someone who was unfaithful. I'm devastated to read that she is now accusing me of conduct that did not occur. I was blindsided by her post and always wanted the best for her. As a husband, as a son, and future father, I do not condone any kind of mistreatment of women. End quote. That was Chris Hardwick's response. To summarize, he denied sexual abuse ever occurred, and he says he's genuinely surprised at these allegations, and he takes it very seriously because he's a husband, a son, and future father. So, as per Chris's response, he is not taking these allegations lightly, and his official response is that he doesn't. He denies the allegations. So, let's approach it from this standpoint right now. Let's remind ourselves, these are not legal. There have been Chloe has not brought criminal charges against Chris Hardwick. In fact, she never named him officially in the document. And at the end of her statement, she said, and again I quote, "P.S. to the man who tried to ruin my future, a sincere and heartfelt apology could have made my last 4 years of hell a lot easier. The person I used to date would try to sue me due to pride. I would not recommend it. I have audio video that will support and prove many of the things I've stated in this post. I've chosen not to include it for your sake, in the hopes that the person you've become will do the right thing." To which Chris Hardwick responds, he has no idea. Well, maybe he didn't say that. He just denies the sexual abuse. He denies that any abuse occurred. He says that they had a bad relationship and even yelled at each other, but he denies the sexual abuse, and he's heartbroken to read that he's been accused of it. Here's the thing, as it stands right now, since it's not a legal issue right now. I have heard some. Let me start it this way. If Chris Hardwick did these things to her, he deserves to burn for it. He deserves justice for sexually abusing Chloe Dykstra. If he did these things, he deserves to reap what he's sown. Absolutely, I do not disagree with that. Here's the testy waters for this, and it involves the Me Too movement in a sexual abuse cases, period. Male or female. A female accusing a male accusing a female accusing a male, female accusing a female. Doesn't matter. What Chloe Dykstra is saying here, for her sake and for the Me Too movement's sake, better be real. And better be provable in court. These are severe allegations to raise against somebody. Severe. And if she is not telling the truth, so to speak, which I'm not saying she's not, please freaking hear me. I am not saying she's lying. I'm saying if she's lying, she deserves legal action against her also. Do you know why? Hear me out. Please hear me out. If someone is lying about being sexually abused, it makes other people, in this case other women, scared to share their story. It makes them scared to confess what has happened to them. If this high-profile media, whoever, is lying about being sexually abused, it sets the whole movement back. It sets women back. It sets everyone who's been sexually abused back all the further. So it makes you ask, if she is lying about this, what does she stand to gain? She's said over and over that he blacklisted her. He made calls to blacklist her from ever working again. What is she after here? She hasn't offered any. She says she has proof. She says she has audio and video proof. But she's waiting for him to make the right response, for him to do the right thing and admit to what happened. I have heard some people say, not me. I have heard the opinion stated that this could be blackmail. That if there was actual abuse, that she, quote unquote, should have released legally damning evidence against him. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what she would. The rub I have with that opinion is that I don't know what she said, that she's doing fine. That she's doing okay career-wise, has her own house and everything. So I'm not sure how much I agree with that opinion that she might be blackmailing Chris Hardwick, because if she actually had abuse against her, she would have just released and she would have named him. I don't know how far along I agree with that. You're, of course, listeners, you are entitled to your own opinion about it. But I go back to my opinion on it. This is my opinion on it. I'm about to tell you my opinion, or reaffirm my opinion on it. Sexual abuse allegations are serious, and as evidenced here, it doesn't even matter if Chris Hardwick is completely innocent. It doesn't even matter if Chloe is lying about this. The allegations of sexual conduct have crippled Chris Hardwick's career. Anybody associated with him, any company associated with him so far has absolutely cut ties with him. He is not working right now because of accusations and allegations. Accusations and allegations are not criminal. It's not, he hasn't been tried in court. This isn't criminal punishment. Right now, it's just accusations. It's not legal. It's just accusations. And all you need right now is accusations. So here's my opinion. You need to be extremely careful with accusations. Extremely careful. Because of what I said earlier. If for some reason, God forbid, she's lying about this, she has just done irreversible damage to thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of women and sexual abuse victims. If Chloe is, God forbid, lying about this, she has done a severe disservice to those who have actually been sexually abused. So part of me hopes that she's not lying about any of this, that she's telling the truth, and that she has actual evidence. I don't have an opinion one way or the other of Chris Hardwick. And I'm one of these people who never thought, it never crossed my mind that he could be some sort of sexual predator. But again, I don't know him. I've never met him. In fact, I thought about reaching out to him before all this happened. Even I'm falling... I'm influenced by these accusations because I thought about reaching out to him to have him on my show, to have him on Geek Therapy Radio. Now, I sympathize with the companies and industries that don't want anything to do with him right now because I don't want to have him on Geek Therapy Radio right now. Maybe if he wants to come on here and tell his side of the story, that's one thing. But I had active intentions of having him on Geek Therapy Radio to geek out with me, to talk about nerd stuff. But right now, that's not on the table. I'm kind of siding with AMC and other companies. It's too hot. It's a hot potato, and I don't want to touch it. If Chris Hardwick did the things that Chloe is accusing him of doing, he deserves to reap what he sows. So, that's where I'm at with this. To really summarize, if Chris Hardwick has done what he's accused of doing, he deserves swift and severe justice for being a part of sexual abuse, for inflicting that on somebody else. Quick and severe justice for his actions if he actually did this. Equally, this is my opinion, equally, due to equality and the entire Me Too movement, if Chloe is lying about this or doing it to get some sort of personal gain at the expense of those who have actually been sexually abused, she deserves swift and equal justice. Swift and equal justice. I hope for her sake and the entire Me Too movement that she's telling the truth. I have no personal reason to doubt that she is telling the truth. I have no reason to doubt what she's saying because I have met many women in my life. Most women in my life have dealt with sexual abuse. Most. Not some, not 6 out of 10. It's like 9 out of 10. More likely 10 out of 10. So this situation is sticky. I gave you both sides. I read both of their statements. I've given you my opinion on the matter that I just want justice. Justice against Chris if he did these things. Justice against Chloe Dykstra if she's lying about it for personal gain, which again, I have no opinion or reason to believe that she is lying. And I hope for her sake and every sexually abused human being's sake that she's not lying, that she is telling the truth and she has proof. Just want equality here. Just looking for equality here. I don't know how many other podcasts or sources you've heard talk about this. There's TMZ and blah, 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 and all sorts of things in print talking about it all over online, but I haven't heard any other podcasts or media really talking about this. And once again, this is a call to all of you listening that your opinions are welcome and your information is welcome. If you have information on this story that is true, feel free to share it. If I didn't mention something that I should have mentioned, let me know and let others know. I am just a conduit for the spreading of good information. Even if I did something wrong or said something wrong or did something inaccurate, please call it out and spread good, constructive information. It doesn't help. It doesn't help if you say, "Hey, idiot, here's the things you missed." That's stupid. That doesn't help anybody. Just give your information preferably with sources. If you've listened to my show long enough, you know this is a community. And you know that I've said multiple times that I don't pretend to be the end-all, be-all of that community. I'm bringing things to the table, and you're sitting around the table with me and offering your voice and your opinions on the matter. So I invite you to do that here. I am not asking you at all to share any personal cases of your own personal issues with abuse. I can't ask you to do that. I'm not asking you to do that. This is an opinion about this. This is commentary on justice. If someone's doing something wrong, I hope they get justice. Both parties. I've said my piece. You know where I stand on this now. Hopefully I've cleared the air. Why it gets into any man's head or woman's head that they can sexually abuse somebody for their pleasure will forever boggle my mind because it's not in my personality. It's not something I can wrap my head around. Let me be really frank with you right here. Since I've already said the F word in quotes, in Chloe's quotes, I repeated what she said. She said the F word, not me. I don't understand the desire to sexually abuse somebody or to get sex, and I'm going to be really frank, because masturbation is a thing. I don't understand why someone could be so driven to hurt somebody to get sex when there's ways they can take care of the urge, let's just say. And I know in a disturbed mind, just taking care of the urge is not enough. I'm just saying I don't personally identify with it. I don't identify with that urge to get sex at any cost. I can't identify with that. Maybe there's someone listening who can identify. We can get into the whole how porn has warped people's minds. We can get into all that. Maybe we'll on another Midweek Geek. But yeah, I told you at the beginning of this episode, this is going to be a very real and frank discussion. And I think we got very real with it. But I want to know your opinions. What do you think? Do you also let me know if this was a good episode? And by that I mean, if you don't want me to shy away from covering such intense topics, especially in Midweek Geek, which is not on the broadcast. It's not on the radio, obviously. I said F. I said the F word. I repeated the F word, I should say. Let me know if I should, if you're okay with me weighing in on subjects like this. Because these are heavy. These are heavy subjects. But I just wanted to talk about it. It's worth talking about. That's going to do it for this edition of Midweek Geek. I hope it leaves you with something to think about. I hope this is a conversation starter. Other than that, please take this as further reminder to be good to each other, to treat each other well. And it starts with treating yourself well. You can't love somebody else without loving yourself first and knowing what you're about. That's what geek therapy is all about. Find your hobby, find your passion, find something that brings you joy as a healthy coping outlet for whatever is eating you. Share that with other people who are hurting because it might help them cope with what they're dealing with. That is the entire mission statement of Geek Therapy Radio. So I hope this episode leaves you thinking and being mindful about how you treat others. As always, let me know below in the comments if you're hearing this on any sort of media player that allows you to comment below. Let me know what you think. This is a hot button issue. It's a hot topic. Controversial topic. But anyways, that's going to do it for Midweek Geek. I'm Johnny Hemberger. I've been your mental curator for this past however long this podcast was. Stay tuned to Geek Therapy Radio as I drop the actual real show on Friday, and stay tuned on KPRC 950. And a reminder that you can find Geek Therapy Radio podcast and blog and all that stuff on 94.5, The Buzz's website, and Sunny 99.1's website, also KPRC 950 AM's website, and you can hear it on the air, KPRC 950 AM, midnight Saturday, 12 a.m. Sunday technically, and you can always catch the Midweek Geek podcast as I drop it on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Point is, subscribe to Geek Therapy Radio and you will not be out of the geek loop. Be good to each other, my geeks. Be good to yourself. I will see you in just a couple days.